Hi, welcome back, fellow artists and art fans. Those of you visiting for the first time, I'm Anne from Anne M. Lorenc Art. This is the first of the King Solomon's not tutorial videos using the grid method, which you'll need a piece of graph paper and a pencil and eraser or a pen. And you can pause the video to go grab that if you need to. And if you're all set, let's go. Okay, so I have my graph paper ready, and I'm using a graph paper that uses 1-inch squares and inside each 1-inch square is 10 by 10 small squares. And you can use whatever size graph paper that you want. You just will need to maybe adjust it a little differently than, like, don't go with the exact measurements that I'm doing, but it will follow the same principle. Right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this to be this top left hand corner is going to be 2 blocks high and 2 long, 2 wide. So I'm going to go up 2 and then 2 squares, 2 full squares over. So it'll be a 20 high and 20 across. Then I'm going to skip 1 square or 10 little squares, and I'm going to go 20 over and 20 down. And then I'm going to skip that next square, like that next block, and I'm going to do, so to skip the 10 little squares, then it's 20 squares up and 20 squares across for that bottom right corner. Now for the bottom left corner, again, 20 squares across, and then it will be 20 squares up. Now sometimes when you're working with graph paper, you'll get like, it's the, those blue lines are actually raised a little bit, so sometimes you might get a little bit of a snag with your pencil and you have to go back and just kind of neaten out the line. So now that we have our 4 corners in, I'm going to put in this picture in side as split screen so that you can see more clearly the points that I'm talking about when we come to connecting to build the skeleton of the King Solomon's knot. Okay, so the first 2 points we're going to connect are A and D, and so you're going to come down from A, that's going to be your longer line, and then you're going to leave like a little bit of a space to make the bottom part that connects to the D. Sometimes it's more helpful to draw up, sometimes down, depending on how you want to line it up. But and now G to B connects, and I do the shorter line there. Can erase a little bit to leave room for the ribbon. Now I'm going to connect C and F, and so C will be the longer line. That's the one that's going to go over the line that would have gone from A to D, and then just checking to make sure that line is where I want it. So it's a little off, so I'm just fixing it there. Sometimes the squares in a graph paper might like throw you off a little bit. So now I'm just going to finish up that A to D line. And now coming to the E to H. And the side coming from E is going to be longer. And then here, finishing off that F to C, and now back to G to B. That's going to be the longer of the G to B line, and then finishing off the E to H. And then you can see you've got your basic knot right there. Okay, so from here we're going to start adding in the ribbon effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming out with this grid, I'm coming out 3 squares wide on either side of the ribbon. So I generally start with the outer section of the ribbon first, and then I'll go back in and do the inner section of the ribbon. And I'm basically going to follow along the lines that I just made. And I know sometimes as you're doing this, you may need to adjust the interior lines. Like I can already tell I'm probably going to need to lengthen some of the ribbon lines. But you can see this is one of the areas where the grid can be helpful, where you can get those you know, if you want to have exactly make sure that you have the exact same measurements. So that's useful. Um, and so now I'm just going to continue going right along either side of the interior lines that I just did. So I'll do the outer part and then the inner part. And again, it's just a matter of following it right along. Also, just a tip, if you're trying to draw a straight line and you're drawing a vertical line, or even a diagonal one, and it helps if you draw going up. It helps keep your hand a bit steadier. But you can go obviously in either direction. I've done obviously both as well. So, and then you can see the knot is starting to come into play here. And again, just finishing out those corners. And again, that's one of the nice things about the grid, is that you can line it up. But if you have seen my freehand videos, there's a link to them in the description below if you want to check that one out, where you can see that you can do the whole same thing freehand as well, and still have it look pretty precise. And then yeah, that line had gotten a little crooked because of I think the ridges that the graph paper lines make on you. But graph paper is a nice way if you want to have the grid option to do, and you don't want to have to draw out all your dots and things like that, and you don't have to worry about trying to do quite as much math to do it this way. So for those of you that like it to be very precise, you might enjoy this grid method using the graph paper. So that's one of my Celtic design art hacks, I guess, if you want to call it that. Instead of having to draw out a whole grid, I do it this way. The other thing with doing on a grid is that you will need to put it then on a light box, or find another way to get it onto good paper. But I'll do a tutorial on that another time. This one is just going to basically focus on how you will draw out this King Solomon's knot. And then, so I've just got that one more section to do there. And then from here, so you have a nice precise knot here. Okay, so now I've neatened out the edges there, and I'm just going to go and I'm going to make those connecting edges so that I know I'm going to block those in. As I've said before, you can leave the knot just open, the way I have it there, or you can start closing it off and put a border and do some decorating on the inside. So in this case, I'm coming out about, I think I'm coming out 4 squares, just to make it a little bit wider than the ribbon sections. Just give it a little bit of contrast. So I'm making 4 little squares wide, and then just going around to outline it, and that will wind up becoming a border for this knot. So it just makes it a little bit more finished, I feel. But again, you don't have to put a border around your knot work. It just depends on the look that you're going for. So just trying to show you the different options so that you can see both options with this. And again, there you can see just drawing the line straight up helps keep it a little steadier, and then going across. And I find when I'm doing horizontal lines, it's generally easier for me to go from left to right than right to left. Tend to be a little bit neater. Okay, so now I'm going to start outlining this in the black, going over all the pencil lines. And the pen that I'm using to do this is a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen. It's a bullet nib 1.5, and it is actual India ink inside of this pen. They're very nice. I like these. So anyway, so you're going to go ahead and just go over all those lines that you just drew, and then we'll get into the next part. So here we go. Okay, so here's your finished King Solomon's knot in the sense of the outline being done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of decoration into this by doing some cross hatching. And to match with what I did with the freehand version where I used the markers, the colored markers to color them in, just to show you the different lines, how the different ribbon patterns go, the ribbon paths go. I'm going to do this one in, so this is the equivalent of red. These vertical lines represent red for cross hatching, and I'm going to do a video on that on Friday of this week. So look for that. But anyway, this is going to be the red, and I'm just going to cross hatch all of that in. Okay, so now that the red is in, I'm going to crosshatch the green in, and to do the green crosshatching, I'm doing vertical lines, I'm sorry, not vertical lines, diagonal lines that are coming down on an angle from the from left to right. So you're going to do a downward angle to indicate green. Again, you don't have to do this exact style of crosshatching. I'm just explaining the type that I'm doing so that it matches with the color version. I'm going to do each knot work in a different color combination when I do another style knot after we finish with the King Solomon's knots, just to help with finding them later. So this is, again, symbolizing green as we go through this. And so you're just going to do those diagonal left to right. Okay, so now that the cross-hatching for the red and green, representing the red and green is in, I'm going to put in the cross-hatching that represents the black. So basically it's vertical lines and then horizontal lines in the same section to represent black. And so I'm just going to fill in all those remaining spaces other than the border with the black cross-hatching. And there's your finished King Solomon's knot using the grid method and cross-hatching, and just sign it off and you're done. Everyone, thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, please hit that like button and leave me a comment. Let me know what you found most helpful. Remember to subscribe so that you can be notified of more tutorials both in this series and future series. And again, I'm Anne from Anne M. Lorenc Art, and until next time, happy adventuring in art. Bye!